My wedding was being live-streamed, a supposed celebration of love and commitment, when Brandon, the man I was about to vow my life to, shattered everything. In front of everyone I had ever known, family, friends, colleagues, he rejected me at the altar, his words like daggers, calling me too fat and ugly to marry. The air crackled with shock and humiliation as 300 guests, phones raised, recorded my public destruction, eager to share the spectacle on social media. Then, a savior appeared, or perhaps something far more dangerous. He materialized in the doorway, a figure of lethal elegance standing 6 feet tall, a stark contrast to the gilded chaos around him. The effect was immediate and palpable. Every powerful person in that room, people who commanded empires and moved markets, went pale as if they had seen death walking. He moved with a purpose that silenced the murmuring crowd, striding down the aisle like a predator claiming its prize. He paused before me, his gaze intense, and gently wiped away my tears, a small act of kindness that felt monumental in that moment. Then, he announced to the stunned assembly that he would marry me instead. But when I, in a daze of disbelief and fragile hope, asked him why, his answer sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the Miami heat. I've been watching you for 6 months, Kesha. Now that I have you, I'm never letting go. Was I being rescued, or claimed by something far more dangerous than a scornful groom? I had no idea, but the events of the next 24 hours turned my world completely upside down. You need to hear what happened next. I don't, Brandon exclaimed, his voice dripping with arrogance. The words sliced through the lavish Miami wedding hall like a knife through butter, shattering the fragile illusion of perfection. Kesha's hands trembled as she clutched her bouquet of white roses, the delicate petals offering little comfort. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. The priest, a kindly elderly man, blinked in confusion, his mouth hanging open like a fish gasping for air. Excuse me? He stammered, adjusting his glasses as if to better comprehend the unfolding absurdity. Brandon pivoted, addressing the 300 guests crammed into the luxury hall. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting a glittering light on the scene. The afternoon sun streamed through massive windows, offering breathtaking views of the ocean. Everything was meticulously planned, perfectly executed, flawlessly expensive. Everything except the groom's pronouncement. I said, Brandon announced loudly, his voice echoing off the marble floors and gold-trimmed walls. I don't want to marry this woman. A collective gasp rippled through the room, a wave of shock and disapproval. Look at her, he continued, his voice laced with disdain. She's enormous. I was forced into this arrangement by our families, but I refuse to spend my life with someone so ugly. The words landed like physical blows. Kesha felt as if someone had dumped a bucket of ice water over her head. Her beautiful white dress, the one she had spent months choosing and altering, suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, a suffocating symbol of her shattered dreams. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she stubbornly refused to let them fall. Not yet. Not in front of all these people, these witnesses to her humiliation. Her mother leaped up from the front row, her face contorted with rage. Brandon, how dare you? His father stood as well, his face flushed a dangerous shade of red. Son, we had an agreement. I don't care about your business deal. Dad. Brandon shot back, his voice dripping with petulance. He pointed at Kesha as if she were a piece of garbage he'd found in the street. I'm not marrying her. Find someone else to merge companies with. I'm done. The dam finally broke. Tears came then, hot and fast, streaming down Kesha's cheeks and ruining her carefully applied makeup. She had known Brandon didn't love her. Their families had arranged this marriage as a strategic alliance, a merger of their father's companies. But she had held on to the hope that he would at least be kind, that maybe eventually they could become friends. She never imagined he would humiliate her so publicly, so cruelly. Brandon started walking toward the side exit, eager to escape the consequences of his outburst. The crowd murmured like a swarm of angry bees, the air thick with disapproval and morbid curiosity. Some people were recording everything on their phones, their faces illuminated by the screens. By tonight, this disaster would be trending on every social media platform. Kesha wanted to run, to hide, to disappear into the floor and never be seen again. Stop. One word, deep and commanding, cut through the chaos like a knife. The voice came from the back of the hall, near the main entrance. Everyone turned to look, including Kesha, her vision blurry with tears. She could make out a tall figure standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the bright light. The man stepped into the light, and Kesha's breath caught in her throat. He was the most striking man she had ever seen. He possessed a distinct Korean heritage, with sharp cheekbones, a strong jawline, and dark eyes that seemed to pierce through everything, seeing secrets she didn't even know she possessed. His black hair was styled with meticulous precision, framing his face like a work of art. He wore an impeccably tailored black suit that probably cost more than her car. The way he walked, with a smooth, deliberate grace, spoke of power and danger. Each step was measured, like a panther stalking through tall grass, radiating an aura of barely contained intensity. The wedding guests parted like the Red Sea, creating a path as he made his way down the aisle. Nobody said a word. The silence was so complete that Kesha could hear her own ragged breathing, the frantic rhythm a stark contrast to the composed figure approaching her. She noticed several men in the crowd visibly pale when they saw him, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and respect. A woman near the front clutched her pearls, her knuckles white, and whispered something that sounded like a prayer. He stopped right in front of the altar, his presence radiating an almost palpable energy. Up close, he was even more impressive. He had to be at least 6 feet tall, his broad shoulders filling the space. When his dark eyes locked onto Kesha's face, she felt a jolt of electricity shoot through her body, a strange and unsettling sensation. Nobody had ever looked at her like that before, with such intense focus, like she was precious, like she was beautiful. My name is Sung Min, he said, his voice smooth and rich like expensive whiskey, laced with a subtle, almost hypnotic quality. And I will marry her. The hall erupted in a cacophony of shocked voices, a collective gasp of disbelief. Brandon spun around, his face twisted with confusion and anger. Who the hell are you? Sung Min didn't even glance at him. He kept his eyes fixed on Kesha, his gaze unwavering, as if no one else existed in the room. Someone who knows value when he sees it. Kesha's mind spun in circles, struggling to process the impossible situation. This had to be a dream, a bizarre hallucination born of stress and humiliation. Men like this didn't exist in real life. They definitely didn't volunteer to marry rejected brides at ruined weddings. She opened her mouth to speak, to ask a question, to scream, but no words came out. You can't just walk in here and take over someone else's wedding? Brandon sputtered, his bravado starting to crumble, the fear creeping into his voice like a rising tide. Now Sung Min did look at him, turning his head slowly, deliberately. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees, the air suddenly thick with tension. You made it very clear this isn't your wedding anymore. You walked away. I'm simply stepping in to fill the void. A man in the front row stood up quickly, his movements jerky and anxious. He was older, wearing an expensive suit that reeked of old money, and he looked terrified. Mr. Sung Min, sir, we didn't know you would be here. This is a great honor. Other men started standing too, bowing slightly, their faces pale and strained. Kesha noticed Brandon's father had gone completely white, his lips a thin, bloodless line. He grabbed his son's arm and yanked him backward, his grip surprisingly strong. Brandon, be quiet, he hissed, his voice trembling with suppressed panic. But Dad, he can't just take my bride. Brandon protested, his voice rising in pitch. She's not your bride, his father hissed, his grip tightening on Brandon's arm. You said so yourself. Don't say another word. Sung Min turned back to Kesha, his attention immediately focused on her. He reached out a hand and gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb, the simple gesture sending shivers racing down her spine. I know this is strange, he said softly, his voice a soothing balm to her wounded spirit. I know you're confused and hurt, but I promise you, if you let me, I will spend every day proving that you deserve so much better than him. Kesha's voice came out as barely a whisper, a fragile sound lost in the opulent surroundings. Why, you don't even know me. A small smile touched his lips, a subtle curve that transformed his face from intimidating to breathtaking. I know more than you think. You work in accounting at Chun Industries. You're brilliant with numbers. You volunteer at the animal shelter every Saturday. You make the best lemon cake in Miami. And you deserve someone who sees how extraordinary you are. Her eyes went wide, her breath catching in her throat. How do you know all that? Because I own Chun Industries, he said softly, his voice barely audible above the murmur of the crowd. I've been watching you for 6 months, Kesha, waiting for the right moment. This should have scared her, sent her running for the nearest exit. Some stranger had been watching her, observing her life from a distance. But the way he said her name like it was something sacred, made her heart race for entirely different reasons. His eyes held no cruelty, no disgust, only warmth and something that looked almost like hunger. This is insane, she whispered, her voice trembling. Yes, he agreed, his smile widening. But is staying here, humiliated in front of everyone you know, any less insane? He paused, his gaze intensifying. Come with me, let me show you what you're worth. He held out his hand, his fingers outstretched, offering her an escape from this nightmare. Kesha stared at his hand, her mind reeling. This was crazy, absolutely crazy. She didn't know this man. He could be dangerous. He clearly was dangerous, judging by how everyone was acting. But then she looked at Brandon, who was whispering angrily with his father, his face still flushed with rage. She thought about facing all these people, about the videos that were already spreading online, about going home alone to her empty apartment, the silence amplifying the shame and humiliation. She took Sung Min's hand, her fingers trembling as they met his. His grip was warm and strong, a reassuring anchor in the swirling storm of her emotions. The smile he gave her made her knees weak, a promise of something unknown and potentially life-altering. He turned to address the crowd, his voice once again commanding and resonant. The wedding will continue, same time, same place, 1 week from today. Anyone who wants to celebrate with us is welcome. Anyone who doesn't can leave now. Then, he led Kesha down the aisle, his hand a firm presence at her back. She clutched her bouquet in one hand and held onto him with the other, her white dress flowing behind her like a cloud, a stark contrast to the dark suit of her rescuer. People stared as they passed, their faces a mixture of shock, confusion, and envy. But she kept her eyes fixed forward, focused on him, on this mysterious stranger who had appeared out of nowhere like something from a fairy tale, or perhaps a dark and dangerous dream. A black limousine waited outside, sleek and polished, its tinted windows reflecting the setting sun. A man in a dark suit opened the door with a deferential bow. Sung Min helped Kesha inside first, his touch lingering for a moment longer than necessary, then slid in beside her, filling the space with his presence. The door closed, shutting out the chaos of the wedding hall, the murmuring crowd, the shattered remnants of her old life. They sat in silence for a moment as the car pulled away from the curb, gliding smoothly into the Miami traffic. Kesha's mind was racing, a whirlwind of questions and anxieties. What had she just done? Who was this man, really? What did he want from her? Sung Min reached over and took her hand again, his fingers interlacing with hers. Breathe, he said gently, his voice a low, soothing rumble. You're safe, promise. Who are you, really? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He looked at her with those dark, intense eyes, his gaze unwavering and unsettlingly honest. Someone who's been waiting a very long time for you. And now that I have you, I'm never letting you go. The way he said it, low and possessive, sent a shiver of both fear and exhilaration flooding through Kesha's body. This was dangerous. He was dangerous. But as Miami's skyline blurred past the window, the lights twinkling like fallen stars, and his thumb traced circles on her palm, she realized she didn't want to run. She wanted to know what happened next, to unravel the mystery of this man and the reasons he had crashed her wedding and claimed her as his own. The limousine glided through Miami streets as the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange, pink, and purple. Kesha watched the city lights flicker to life outside the tinted windows, each one a tiny beacon in the gathering darkness. Her wedding dress felt tight around her chest, making it hard to breathe, the layers of silk and lace a suffocating reminder of the day's events. Or maybe that was just the panic settling in, the realization of the enormity of what she had just done. "Where are we going?" she asked, breaking the silence that had stretched between them like a taut wire. Sung-min sat beside her, completely relaxed, his posture suggesting that kidnapping brides was something he did every Tuesday. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere we can talk without 300 people recording us and posting it on social media." "You just crashed my wedding," she said, stating the obvious, still trying to wrap her head around the absurdity of it all. "Your failed wedding?" he corrected gently, a hint of amusement in his voice. "There's a difference." Kesha pulled her hand away from his, suddenly needing space, a small act of defiance against the overwhelming circumstances. "This is crazy. I don't know you. You could be anyone. You could be dangerous." "I am dangerous," he said simply, his honesty startling her. "But never to you." She turned to face him fully, her gaze searching his face for any sign of deceit or malice. In the dim light of the car, he looked even more handsome, a feat she had previously thought impossible. His jaw was sharp enough to cut glass, his cheekbones sculpted by the gods. "Why me? There are a million beautiful women in Miami. Thin women, women who actually know you." Sung-min's expression softened, his gaze becoming almost tender. He reached up and tucked a loose curl behind her ear, the simple gesture sending a jolt of electricity through her. The casual intimacy of the touch made Kesha's breath hitch in her throat. "6 months ago, I came to Chun Industries for a surprise inspection. I wanted to see how my managers were treating employees when they didn't know I was watching. I saw you in the break room sharing your lunch with the new intern who forgot hers. Then I watched you spend your entire lunch break helping her understand the company's complex accounting system." Kesha remembered that day. The intern had been close to tears, overwhelmed by everything. "That's just being nice," she said, dismissing his observation. "No, that's being extraordinary," Sung-min countered, his voice firm. "Later that week, I saw your supervisor take credit for your work on a major project. You knew he did it. Everyone knew he did it. But you said nothing because you didn't want to cause problems. You just kept working, kept being brilliant." Heat crept up Kesha's neck, a blush of embarrassment spreading across her cheeks. "You were spying on me?" she accused, although the accusation lacked heat. "I was learning about you," he corrected, his lips curving into a slight smile. "I started looking forward to going to the office just to catch glimpses of you. The way you hum while you work, how you always bring coffee to the security guard at the front desk, that smile you give even when people don't deserve it." His voice dropped lower, becoming a husky murmur. "And yes, I noticed how beautiful you are. Your curves, your skin, those eyes that see the good in everyone. You captivated me completely." Nobody had ever talked to her like this, praising her character, noticing the small acts of kindness that she considered insignificant. Kesha felt tears threatening again, but for a different reason this time, tears of validation, of unexpected appreciation. "Why didn't you just ask me out like a normal person?" Sung-min's laugh was dark and low, a rumble that vibrated through the car. "Because I'm not a normal person." He paused, his expression hardening. "When I saw the announcement of your engagement to Brandon, I did some research. I knew his type. Spoiled, cruel, someone who would never appreciate what he had. I hoped I was wrong. I bought a last-minute invitation to the wedding, telling myself I would just make sure you were happy." He shook his head, his jaw tightening. "But when I saw him humiliate you like that, I couldn't stay silent anymore." The rage took over. The car turned off the highway onto a private road, the smooth asphalt winding through a lush landscape. Palm trees lined both sides, their fronds swaying gently in the evening breeze. Kesha could smell the salt water through the air vents, the scent of the ocean a familiar comfort. "What do you do exactly?" she asked, her curiosity piqued by his earlier comments and the palpable fear he inspired in others. "Everyone at the wedding looked terrified of you." Sung-min was quiet for a moment, his expression unreadable. "I run several businesses. Some are completely legal, operating in the daylight. Others exist in the shadows, dealing with problems that can't be solved through legal channels." "So, you're a criminal," she said, stating the obvious, her voice tinged with a mixture of apprehension and morbid fascination. "I'm a businessman who operates outside traditional rules," he said carefully, choosing his words with precision. "But I have my own code. I don't hurt innocent people. I protect those who can't protect themselves, and I always keep my promises." The mansion appeared like something from a dream, a breathtaking vision of wealth and luxury. 3 stories of white stone and glass perched right on the edge of the ocean, its architecture a blend of modern elegance and classic grandeur. Lights glowed warm and golden from inside, beckoning her closer. A fountain sparkled in the circular driveway, its water cascading in a mesmerizing display. Kesha had seen houses like this in magazines, but she had never imagined standing in front of one, let alone being invited inside. The driver opened her door with a silent efficiency. Sung-min came around and offered his hand again, his touch sending a familiar shiver down her spine. This time, Kesha took it without hesitation, surrendering to the moment, accepting the unknown. His grip was firm and reassuring, a promise of protection and something more, something she couldn't quite define. Inside, the mansion was even more impressive, surpassing even her wildest expectations. White marble floors reflected the light from crystal chandeliers, creating a dazzling display of opulence. Massive windows offered panoramic views of the ocean stretching out to the horizon, a seemingly endless expanse of shimmering blue. The furniture looked expensive and comfortable at the same time, an invitation to relax and indulge. A woman in her 50s appeared, her demeanor composed and efficient, her movements graceful and silent. She wore a simple black dress, the epitome of understated elegance. "Mr. Sung-min, welcome home," she said, her voice soft and respectful. "Shall I prepare the guest room?" "No, thank you, Mrs. Chen," Sung-min replied, his voice losing some of its previous intensity. "Kesha will take the master suite. I'll use the room on the 3rd floor." Kesha's eyes widened in surprise. "Wait, I'm staying here tonight?" she asked, the question hanging in the air. Sung-min turned to her, his gaze softening. "Unless you want to go back to your apartment where reporters are probably already waiting, eager to capture your humiliation. The video from today has gone viral, Kesha. Your address isn't hard to find." Her stomach dropped, the weight of her situation crashing down on her. She hadn't thought about that, about the media frenzy that was likely to erupt. "My things are all at my place," she said, her voice laced with anxiety. "Give Mrs. Chun your sizes," Sung-min said, gesturing toward the woman. "She'll have everything you need by morning." He paused, his eyes searching her face. "Would you like to see the beach? It's private. Nobody can bother us there." Kesha should have said no. She should have called a cab, gone home, and dealt with the mess like an adult, facing the consequences of her actions with courage and dignity. But something about Sung-min pulled at her, a magnetic force she couldn't resist. Maybe it was how he looked at her, like she was the only person in the world, worthy of his undivided attention. Maybe it was the way her skin tingled every time he touched her, a physical response that defied logic and reason. Or maybe it was simply the allure of the unknown, the temptation to escape her ordinary life and embrace the extraordinary adventure that was unfolding before her. "Okay," she whispered, surrendering to the pull. They walked through the house and out onto a wooden deck that extended towards the ocean. Steps led down to a pristine beach, the white sand glowing silver in the moonlight. The ocean whispered against the shore, its rhythmic sound a soothing balm to her frayed nerves. Stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet, a breathtaking display of celestial beauty. It was the most beautiful thing Kesha had ever seen, a scene of such perfect tranquility that it felt almost unreal. Sung-min removed his jacket and tie, draping them over the deck railing. He rolled up his sleeves, revealing strong, tanned forearms, the muscles flexing with each movement. Then he kicked off his expensive shoes and stepped onto the sand, his bare feet sinking into the soft grains. Kesha laughed, a spontaneous burst of mirth that surprised even her. "You're going to ruin your suit," she said, her voice laced with amusement. "I have 100 suits," he replied, his eyes fixed on her. "I only have one chance at this moment with you." Her heart fluttered, her breath catching in her throat. She reached down and pulled off her heels, letting them drop to the wooden planks. Then, she gathered up her dress so she could walk without tripping, the silk fabric cool against her skin. The sand was cool and soft between her toes, a tactile pleasure that grounded her in the moment. She joined him at the water's edge where tiny waves lapped at their feet, the gentle rhythm of the ocean a constant presence. "I meant what I said in the car," Sung-min said quietly, his voice serious. "I will protect you from Brandon, from anyone who tries to hurt you, from the whole world if necessary." "Why?" Kesha asked, her voice barely audible above the sound of the waves. "What do you want from me?" He turned to face her fully, his body angled towards hers, his presence radiating an intense energy. The moonlight painted his features in silver and shadow, highlighting his sharp jawline and the intensity of his gaze. "Everything, your time, your attention, your thoughts. I want to know what makes you laugh and what makes you cry. I want to feed you breakfast and argue with you about which movies are best. I want to watch you succeed and celebrate every victory." He stepped closer, his proximity making her breath catch in her throat. "And yes, I want to touch you, kiss you, make you feel things you've never felt before." Kesha's whole body went hot despite the cool ocean breeze. His words were so direct, so honest, so utterly compelling. "That's very direct," she managed to say, her voice a shaky whisper. "I don't believe in playing games," he said, his voice dropping lower. "Not with something this important." His hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing across her lower lip, sending a jolt of electricity through her veins. "Tell me to stop and I will. Tell me you want to leave and I'll drive you home myself. But if you stay, understand that I'm not looking for something casual. When I commit, it's forever." She should have been scared. This was happening too fast, too intensely. She knew she was diving into deep water without checking for rocks, risking her heart and her future on a man she barely knew. But looking into his eyes, Kesha saw nothing but honesty and heat, a desire that made her feel powerful instead of ashamed, desirable instead of flawed. "Kiss me," she breathed, surrendering to the pull, accepting the unknown. Sung-min didn't need to be asked twice. He pulled her close, his movements swift and decisive, one hand on her waist and the other sliding into her hair, his fingers tangling in the soft curls. When his lips met hers, Kesha felt like lightning had struck her body, a surge of pure energy that left her breathless and trembling. The kiss started gentle, almost questioning, a tentative exploration of uncharted territory. His lips were soft and warm against hers, tasting like mint and something darker, something thrilling that sent shivers down her spine. Then Kesha's hands gripped his shirt, her fingers digging into the fabric, and everything changed. Sung Min made a low sound in his throat, a primal growl of desire, and deepened the kiss, abandoning all restraint. His tongue traced the seam of her lips, and she opened for him immediately, welcoming him into her mouth, her heart pounding against her ribs like a frantic bird. Heat exploded through her veins, igniting every nerve ending. His hands tightened on her waist, pulling her flush against him, molding her body to his. She could feel every hard plane of his body through her dress, the solid strength of his muscles a promise of pleasure and protection. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, gasping for air, Kesha felt dizzy, disoriented, as if she had just woken from a vivid dream. Her lips were swollen and tingling, her senses overloaded. Sung Min looked at her like a man starving, like she was everything he needed, the missing piece of his soul. "Stay," he said, his voice rough with desire. "Not just tonight. Stay with me. Let me show you what it feels like to be cherished." Kesha knew this was reckless, impulsive, potentially disastrous. Knew she was diving into deep water without checking for rocks, trusting her heart to a man she barely knew. A dangerous man with secrets and shadows in his past. But standing on this beach in the moonlight, wrapped in the arms of a man who looked at her like she hung the stars, she couldn't bring herself to care. The fear was still there, a whisper in the back of her mind, but it was drowned out by the overwhelming tide of desire, the promise of something extraordinary, the intoxicating allure of the unknown. "Okay," she whispered against his lips, her voice barely audible. "I'll stay." 3 weeks had passed since Kesha moved into the mansion. 3 weeks of living in a world she never knew existed. A world of luxury and privilege, of power and danger. Every morning started the same way, a blissful routine that still felt surreal. She would wake up in the huge master bedroom, bathed in the soft morning light, the ocean view stretching out before her like a living painting. And Sung Min would already be there, waiting for her, with breakfast on a silver tray, a silent offering of devotion. "You don't have to do this every day," Kesha said on a Thursday morning, propping herself up against the pillows, her voice still husky with sleep. "You probably have important business things to handle, people to intimidate, companies to take over." Sung Min set the tray across her lap, arranging the perfectly scrambled eggs, fresh fruit, and toast with butter melting into golden pools. "Nothing is more important than this," he said, his voice firm and unwavering. He sat on the edge of the bed, watching her eat with an intensity that had made her self-conscious at first, but she was getting used to it now, the way he looked at her like she was the most fascinating person alive, his gaze lingering on every detail of her face, every curve of her body. "What's on your schedule today?" she asked between bites of strawberry, trying to distract him from his intense scrutiny. "Meetings until noon," he replied, his eyes never leaving her face. "Then I thought I'd teach you some self-defense moves. You should know how to protect yourself in this world." He reached over and wiped a drop of juice from her chin, his touch light and lingering. The casual intimacy of the gesture made her stomach flip, a familiar flutter of butterflies that still caught her by surprise. "What about you?" she asked, shifting the focus back to herself. Kesha had been thinking about this for days, struggling to reconcile her old life with this new, extraordinary reality. "I need to figure out what I'm doing with my life," she said, her voice laced with uncertainty. "I can't just live here forever, eating your food and sleeping in your bed, a kept woman with no purpose." "Why not?" Sung Min asked simply, his expression unreadable. "Because I need to work. I need purpose. I've always wanted to open a bakery. A small, cozy place where I could bake my lemon cakes and make people happy. But that takes money and planning and permits, things I don't have." She sighed, her voice filled with longing. "Plus, I'm technically still employed at Chen Industries, but I haven't been to work since the wedding disaster, and I doubt they're holding my position." "You quit that job 2 weeks ago," Sung Min said matter-of-factly. "I had Mrs. Chun handle the paperwork." Kesha nearly dropped her fork, her eyes widening in disbelief. "You what? You made me quit my job without even asking me? Your supervisor was stealing your work, the environment was toxic, and you were being underappreciated," Sung Min said, his expression unwavering. "You deserved better. As for the bakery, I own a commercial property in South Beach that's been sitting empty for years, a perfect location in a high-traffic area. It's yours if you want it, fully renovated and ready to go." "I can't just take a building from you," Kesha protested, her mind reeling from the enormity of his offer. "That's insane. Consider it an investment," he said, his voice softening. "I believe in you, Kesha. I believe in your talent, your passion, your ability to make people happy with your baking." He stood and kissed the top of her head, his touch lingering for a moment longer than necessary. "Think about it. I'll see you this afternoon for training." After he left, Kesha sat in bed, mind spinning. This was her life now, living with a man who casually gave away buildings and made her breakfast every morning. A man who was gradually stealing her heart piece by piece, transforming her life in ways she never could have imagined. That afternoon, in the mansion's private gym, Sung Min taught her how to break someone's grip, his hands wrapped around her wrists, firm but careful. "Twist toward my thumb," he instructed, his voice low and intense. "That's the weakest part of any grip." Kesha followed his direction, twisting her wrist and breaking free easily. "That actually works," she said, surprised by the effectiveness of the technique. "Everything I teach you works," he said, his eyes meeting hers, a silent promise in his gaze. They practiced for an hour, sparring and grappling, learning to defend themselves against various attacks. By the end, Kesha was sweating and breathing hard, her muscles aching, but she felt powerful, capable, stronger than she had ever felt before. Sung Min watched her with approval, his dark eyes burning with a heat that both intimidated and excited her. A man appeared in the gym doorway, his presence announced by a polite cough. He was tall and lean, with kind eyes and black hair falling across his forehead, giving him a slightly disheveled but approachable appearance. "Boss, we need to leave in an hour if we're going to make the Vegas flight," he said, his voice respectful but casual. "Thank you, Tahan," Sung-min replied, his gaze never leaving Kesha's face. Tahan turned to Kesha, offering a warm smile. "I have business in Las Vegas tonight. A dinner meeting," Sung-min continued, turning his attention back to her. "I'd like you to come with me." Kesha wiped sweat from her forehead with a towel, her mind racing. "To a business meeting? Won't I be in the way? I don't even know what you do." "You'll be by my side," he said, his voice firm and unwavering. "That's where you belong. Besides, I want you to see the side of my world." Tahan stepped into the gym fully, his eyes twinkling with amusement. Over the past weeks, he had become something like a friend to Kesha, a confidant and a source of levity in Sung-min's intense world. He brought her books from the library, taught her card games, and made her laugh with stories about Sung-min's more ridiculous business rivals. "Say yes," Tahan urged with a grin. "Vegas is beautiful at night. Plus, the boss is insufferable when you're not around. He checks his phone every 5 minutes, hoping you've texted." Sung-min shot him a look that would have terrified most people, his eyes narrowing and his jaw tightening. Tahan just laughed, unfazed by the silent threat. "Okay," Kesha agreed, her curiosity piqued and her heart warming at Tahan's words. "But I don't have anything fancy enough to wear to a business dinner in Las Vegas. My wardrobe consists mainly of jeans and sweatpants." "Already handled," Sung-min said, his lips curving into a slight smile. "Mrs. Chun has 3 options waiting in your room, each more dazzling than the last." For hours later, Kesha stood in front of a mirror in a luxurious Las Vegas hotel suite, barely recognizing herself. The dress was deep emerald green, a stunning shade that complemented her skin tone and highlighted her curves. It hugged every contour of her body, showcasing her figure without being overtly revealing. It had long sleeves and a subtle neckline that showed just enough to be interesting, leaving something to the imagination. Her hair was styled in soft, cascading curls that framed her face, making her eyes appear larger and more luminous. The makeup artist Sung-min had hired had worked miracles, giving her skin a flawless glow and accentuating her natural beauty. "You look like a queen," Sung-min said from the doorway, his voice a low, appreciative murmur. He wore a charcoal gray suit that fit him like it had been painted on, accentuating his broad shoulders and lean waist. His hair was styled back from his face, showing his sharp features and the intensity of his gaze. "I look expensive," Kesha corrected, turning to face him, a hint of self-deprecation in her voice. "This dress probably costs more than my car did." He crossed the room in 3 silent strides, his presence filling the space, radiating an aura of power and confidence. Sung-min strode purposefully towards her, his gaze unwavering, and drew her close until she was pressed against the solid wall of his chest. "You look priceless right now, Kesha. There's a monumental difference." The dinner was being held at an exclusive, invitation-only restaurant perched atop the highest floor of one of Vegas's most opulent casinos. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking panorama of the glittering Vegas Strip stretched out far below, a dazzling tapestry of light and sound. Inside, the room was a symphony of understated elegance, filled with men sporting impeccably tailored, undoubtedly expensive suits and women draped in shimmering gowns and enough dazzling jewelry to rival the lights outside. Everyone in the room seemed to know Sung-min. As he moved through the crowd, Kesha's hand tucked securely in the crook of his arm. Heads nodded in deferential respect. At their table, a constellation of Sung-min's men, their faces impassive, introduced her to a rotating cast of business associates, each introduction delivered with a carefully calibrated measure of respect. Kesha smiled, offered a polite handshake, and struggled to remember the rapid-fire succession of names. Tahan sat on her other side, a calming presence, offering a quiet, almost conspiratorial commentary that helped to alleviate her mounting nervousness. Then, a figure approached their table, an unwelcome intrusion into their carefully orchestrated evening. The man was older, Kesha guessed around 50, with a mane of impeccably groomed gray hair and piercing, unsettlingly cold blue eyes. Something about him, a subtle undercurrent of menace, sent a shiver crawling across Kesha's skin. "Sung-min," the man purred, his voice smooth as oiled silk, yet somehow laced with a sharp, cutting edge. "I heard you acquired something new recently. I simply had to see for myself." Sung-min's entire demeanor shifted. The relaxed air he had been projecting vanished, replaced by a steely resolve. His hand tightened almost imperceptibly on Kesha's. "Victor Kane," he said, his voice now a low, dangerous rumble. "I wasn't aware you were invited to this dinner." Victor offered a predatory smile. "I go where I please, Sung-min, especially when there's something interesting to see." His eyes, cold and assessing, slid over Kesha like a viscous oil, lingering on her curves with a blatant disrespect that made her want to recoil. "So, this is the rejected bride everyone's been whispering about. I saw the video, of course. Quite entertaining, I must say." Kesha felt her face flush with a wave of humiliation. The memory of that day, the searing sting of public rejection, resurfaced with brutal clarity. Sung-min began to rise from his chair, his intentions radiating off him in palpable waves, but Victor, seemingly oblivious or perhaps deliberately provocative, pressed on. "I have to wonder what you see in her, though, Sung-min. She's rather large, isn't she? Not exactly the type a man of your status usually keeps around." Victor smirked, a cruel, predatory expression that revealed the ugliness lurking beneath his polished facade. "Then again, maybe you just felt sorry for her. A little charity case to assuage your guilt." The words hit Kesha like physical blows, each syllable a carefully aimed barb designed to wound. All her deepest insecurities, the anxieties she had fought so hard to suppress, came rushing back with overwhelming force. Maybe Victor was right. Maybe Sung-min was just being kind. Maybe this entire elaborate charade was built on a foundation of pity. Sung-min moved with a speed that defied comprehension. One moment he was seated, a picture of controlled composure, the next he had Victor by the throat. His powerful hand of vice clamping down on the older man's windpipe, slamming him back against the nearest wall with a force that rattled the entire room. The opulent restaurant fell silent, all conversation abruptly ceasing as every eye turned to witness the unfolding drama. "Let me make something very clear," Sung-min said, his voice dangerously calm, each word a carefully measured threat. "Kesha is mine. She is perfect exactly as she is. And if you, or anyone else, ever disrespects her again, I will end you. Not hurt you, not scare you. End you completely. Do you understand?" Victor's face had gone a mottled purple, his eyes bulging with a mixture of fear and choked-off rage. He managed a tiny, almost imperceptible nod, a desperate plea for release. Sung-min released him as abruptly as he had seized him, and the older man collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath, his composure shattered. Sung-min turned back to the table, his movements fluid and graceful as he calmly adjusted his suit jacket, smoothing away any hint of the violent outburst. "We're leaving," he announced, his voice once again a smooth, controlled baritone. Tahan, ever the pragmatist, immediately took charge. He nodded curtly to the rest of the meeting, signaling its abrupt end. Then he took Kesha's hand, his grip firm and reassuring, and led her out of the restaurant. Nobody dared to try and stop them. In the hushed confines of the elevator as they descended back to their suite, Kesha found herself shaking. But it wasn't from fear. It was from something else entirely. A potent cocktail of shock, gratitude, and a strange, unfamiliar thrill. The way Sung-min had defended her, the raw, barely contained violence that had surged beneath his polished surface, had awakened something primal deep within her. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and they walked to their suite in a tense silence. As soon as the door clicked shut behind them, Sung-min turned to her, his expression a mixture of apology and concern. "I'm sorry you had to see that side of me, Kesha. I know it must have been frightening." Kesha stepped close to him, her movements deliberate and bold, and placed her palms flat against his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heartbeat beneath her fingertips. "I'm not frightened," she said, her voice husky with emotion. "I'm grateful. Nobody has ever stood up for me like that before." "Get used to it," he said roughly, his gaze burning into hers. "Because I meant every word. You're mine, Kesha, and I protect what's mine." She looked up at him through her lashes, a silent invitation in her eyes. "Then stop talking," she whispered, "and show me." Something snapped in Sung-min's carefully constructed control. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch both possessive and tender, and kissed her hard, all the gentleness from their beach kiss replaced with a raw, consuming hunger. Kesha kissed him back just as fiercely, her hands fisting in his shirt, clinging to him as if he were the only solid thing in a swirling vortex of emotions. They stumbled towards the bedroom, their mouths never separating, each kiss an escalating demand for more. Sung-min's hands found the zipper of her dress and pulled it down slowly, each inch of exposed skin a silent promise. The green fabric pooled at her feet, leaving her standing before him in just her delicate lace underwear. He stepped back to look at her, his gaze sweeping over her with an intensity that made her breath catch in her throat. "Perfect," he breathed, his voice thick with desire. "Absolutely perfect." Kesha had always hated her body, had seen it as a source of shame and inadequacy. Too big, too soft, too much. But the way Sung-min looked at her, with such open worship and undisguised desire, made her feel, for the first time in her life, like a goddess worthy of adoration. She reached for his shirt buttons, her fingers fumbling with them in her eagerness to feel his skin against hers. He helped her, shrugging out of the shirt to reveal a body that made her mouth go dry. Lean muscle, smooth skin stretched taut over sculpted contours, a scattering of scars that told silent stories of battles fought and won, stories she desperately wanted to learn. When they fell onto the bed together, skin against skin, Kesha felt like she was burning from the inside out, every nerve ending alight with a white-hot intensity. Sung-min kissed every inch of her, exploring the landscape of her body with meticulous attention. Her neck, her shoulders, the soft curve of her stomach. His hands traced her hips, her thighs, learning every dip and swell, every secret place that made her gasp and tremble. "You're shaking," he murmured against her skin, his voice low and husky. "I've never felt like this before," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "Like I'm going to explode." "Then let go, Kesha. I've got you." When they finally came together, Kesha did explode. Colors burst behind her eyes, a kaleidoscope of sensation that overwhelmed her senses. Sung-min moved with a controlled power, watching her face, learning what made her gasp and arch, what brought her the most exquisite pleasure. He whispered words in Korean that she didn't understand but felt deep in her bones. Ancient promises and declarations of desire that resonated with a primal intensity. They made love for hours, learning each other's bodies, pushing boundaries, discovering the secret pathways to unimaginable pleasure. Kesha had never felt so desired, so cherished, so completely safe while being so utterly vulnerable. Afterward, they lay tangled together, sweaty and satisfied, their bodies still humming with the aftershocks of their passion. Sung-min traced lazy patterns on her back, his touch light and soothing. Outside the window, Vegas blazed with light, an artificial sun that refused to yield to the approaching dawn. "Stay with me?" Sung-min said quietly, his voice laced with an unexpected vulnerability. "Not just in my house, Kesha. Stay with me in every way. Be mine completely." Kesha lifted her head to look at him, her heart swelling with a love so profound it almost hurt. His dark eyes were serious, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before, stripped bare of the usual defenses and revealing the raw emotion beneath. I'm already yours, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I think I have been since you walked down that aisle. He kissed her softly, sweetly, sealing the promise between them with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. And as the sun began to rise over the desert, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Kesha knew she'd found something she didn't even know she was looking for. She'd found home. New York City in October was a masterpiece of autumnal beauty. The leaves were turning in a riot of golden red and fiery orange, and the air had that perfect crisp quality that made Kesha want to abandon cars altogether and walk everywhere, breathing in the invigorating air. Sung Min's Manhattan penthouse was located in the trendy Tribeca neighborhood, boasting massive, panoramic windows that offered breathtaking views overlooking the majestic Hudson River. It was different from the sprawling opulence of the Florida mansion, but just as undeniably luxurious, reflecting Sung Min's refined taste and discerning eye. Kesha stood in what would soon be her bakery, breathing in the scent of fresh paint, a tangible sign of her dreams taking shape. The space was perfect, everything she had ever envisioned. High ceilings with exposed brick that whispered stories of the building's industrial past, large windows that flooded the room with natural light, and more than enough room for display cases overflowing with delectable treats and cozy tables where customers could linger and savor the moment. Sung Min had been true to his word, exceeding her wildest expectations. He'd handed her the keys 2 weeks ago with a simple, "Make it exactly what you want," and then stepped back, allowing her to unleash her creativity. "The ovens arrive tomorrow," Sung Min said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist, pulling her close against him. "And the contractor assures me that the kitchen will be inspection ready by Friday." Kesha leaned back against his chest, savoring the warmth of his embrace and the certainty of his support. "This is really happening," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. "I'm opening a bakery in Manhattan. It still feels like a dream." "It's happening, Kesha, and you're going to be the most successful bakery in the entire city," he said, kissing her temple. "I have complete faith in you." Over the past month, their relationship had deepened, solidifying into something more profound than she could have ever imagined. They were partners now in every sense of the word. Kesha spent her mornings immersed in planning the bakery, poring over recipes, and sourcing the finest ingredients. Her afternoons were spent in Sung Min's home office, where he had started casually seeking her opinion on various business matters, recognizing the sharp intelligence that lay beneath her unassuming demeanor. It turned out that running an underground empire required sophisticated accounting and meticulous attention to detail. Money needed to be moved discreetly, investments tracked with precision, and legitimate businesses maintained as convincing covers. Kesha's sharp mind for numbers, her innate ability to spot discrepancies that others missed, made her invaluable. She could find patterns in complex financial records, suggest creative solutions to seemingly intractable problems, and offer insights that left seasoned professionals impressed. "You're wasted on baking," Taeyeon had joked last week, a playful glint in his eye. "You should be running a hedge fund, making millions instead of pastries." But Kesha loved baking. She loved the tactile process of creating something beautiful and delicious with her own hands, the satisfaction of watching people's faces light up when they tasted her creations. The bakery was her dream, the culmination of years of hard work and unwavering passion, and Sung Min supported it completely, fostering her ambition and encouraging her every step of the way. The gentle chime of the bell above the bakery door broke the comfortable silence. Kesha turned, expecting to see the contractor arriving with an update on the kitchen renovations. Instead, Brandon stood hesitantly in the doorway, looking nothing like the arrogant, impeccably groomed man from the wedding. His suit was wrinkled and ill-fitting, his hair was messy and unkempt, and dark circles shadowed his eyes, betraying a weariness that went far beyond mere physical exhaustion. Sung Min's entire body went rigid, his relaxed posture instantly transforming into a defensive stance. He stepped protectively in front of Kesha, shielding her from the unwelcome intrusion. "You have 3 seconds to leave," he said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Before I remove you myself." "Please," Brandon said, his voice cracking with desperation. "I just need to talk to Kesha. 5 minutes. That's all I ask." Kesha put her hand on Sung Min's arm, feeling the tension thrumming through his muscles, a palpable current of barely suppressed violence. "It's okay, Sung Min. Let him say whatever he came to say. I can handle it." Sung Min didn't move, his eyes still fixed on Brandon, a silent warning radiating from his every pore. "I'll be right here, Kesha. If he says one wrong word, he's gone." Brandon stepped further into the bakery, keeping his distance, his movements hesitant and uncertain. "Kesha, I came to apologize. What I did at the wedding was unforgivable. I was cruel and stupid, and I've regretted it every single day since." "Why are you really here, Brandon?" Kesha asked coldly, her voice devoid of any warmth or sympathy. "You made your feelings very clear that day. I doubt you came all this way just to express your remorse." "My family lost everything?" Brandon blurted out, the words tumbling out in a rush of desperation. "After I insulted you, after what happened with Sung Min, all our business partners pulled out. My father's company went bankrupt. We lost the house, the cars, everything. My parents aren't speaking to me. They blame me for ruining their lives." Kesha felt a flicker of sympathy, a momentary pang of compassion for the family's misfortune, but it died quickly, extinguished by the memory of her own humiliation. "So, you came here hoping I'd what? Ask Sung Min to fix things for you? Pull some strings to restore your family's fortune?" "I came to beg for forgiveness, Kesha," Brandon said desperately, his voice thick with emotion. "And yes, to ask if there's anything you can do. I know I don't deserve it. I know I was horrible, but please, Kesha, my family is suffering." Sung Min's laugh was harsh, devoid of any humor. "Your family is suffering because of the choices you made, Brandon. Actions have consequences. A lesson you should have learned a long time ago." Brandon's face crumpled, his carefully constructed facade of composure finally cracking under the weight of his despair. I know. I was raised to think that appearance was everything, that image mattered more than character. I see now how wrong that was, how shallow and misguided my values were. He looked at Kesha with tears in his eyes, a genuine plea for understanding etched on his face. You deserved so much better than how I treated you, Kesha. I'm truly sorry. Kesha studied him for a long moment, weighing his words, searching for any sign of insincerity. Part of her, the part that had been publicly humiliated in front of hundreds of people, wanted him to suffer more, to wallow in the consequences of his actions. But another part, the part that Sung-min loved, the part that valued compassion and empathy, couldn't find satisfaction in someone else's pain. I accept your apology, Brandon, she said quietly, her voice calm and measured. But I won't help you, not because I'm cruel or vindictive, but because you need to learn this lesson, Brandon. You need to understand that how you treat people matters, that words have power, and that actions have consequences. You can't expect to be rescued from the mess you created. She stepped closer to Sung-min, who immediately pulled her against his side, his arm a protective barrier between her and the past. I've moved on, Brandon. I'm with someone who sees my worth, who celebrates me instead of tearing me down. I'm happy, happier than I ever would have been with you. Brandon's shoulders slumped in defeat, all the fight drained out of him. I can see that, he said softly, his voice filled with a quiet resignation. He looks at you like you're everything he's ever wanted. He wiped his eyes, trying to regain some semblance of composure. I hope you have a good life, Kesha. You deserve it. He turned and left without another word, the bell chiming softly as the door closed behind him, signaling the end of that chapter in her life. Sung-min cupped Kesha's face in his hands, his gaze searching her eyes for any lingering sign of distress. Are you all right? I'm perfect, she said honestly, her voice filled with genuine emotion. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. That evening, after a long but fulfilling day of bakery planning, Sung-min told Kesha to dress warmly, a mysterious glint in his eyes. He was taking her somewhere special, a surprise he had been meticulously planning for weeks. They rode the elevator to the top floor of the building, but instead of stopping at the penthouse, they continued up, the elevator ascending to a level Kesha hadn't even known existed. The doors opened to reveal a breathtaking transformation. The rooftop had been completely transformed into a private oasis, a sanctuary hidden high above the bustling city. String lights hung between carefully planted trees, creating a canopy of warm, inviting light that cast a magical glow over the space. A miniature garden had been installed, with vibrant flowers blooming in large planters, adding a splash of color to the urban landscape. Comfortable furniture was arranged around a small, elegantly designed fountain, the gentle murmur of the water providing a soothing soundtrack to the breathtaking view. The city sparkled around them like a jewel box, a mesmerizing panorama of light and energy stretched out to the horizon. When did you do this? Kesha breathed, spinning in a circle to take it all in, her eyes wide with wonder. This is incredible, Sung-min. I've been working on it for 3 weeks, he said, a rare smile gracing his lips. Taein helped keep you distracted, making sure you didn't suspect anything. Sung-min took her hand and led her to a cushioned bench near the fountain, the perfect spot to soak in the ambience. I wanted to create a place that was just ours, where we could escape the pressures of the world and simply be together, without ever leaving home. They sat close together, sharing warmth against the October chill, the silence filled with a comfortable intimacy. The city hummed below them, a constant reminder of the frenetic energy of urban life. But up here, cocooned in their private sanctuary, they existed in their own private world, insulated from the chaos below. Can I tell you something? Sung-min asked quietly, breaking the comfortable silence, his voice laced with a hint of hesitancy. Something I've never told anyone before. Always, Kesha said, taking his hand in hers, her heart filled with a quiet anticipation. He was silent for a long moment, staring out at the glittering skyline, gathering his thoughts, steeling himself to reveal a part of himself he had kept hidden for so long. I grew up in Seoul very poor, he began, his voice low and raw with emotion. My father died when I was 8, leaving my mother with 3 children and no money. She worked 3 jobs, cleaning houses, waitressing, anything she could find, but it was never enough. When I was 14, she got sick, he continued, the pain evident in his voice. Cancer. We couldn't afford treatment, not even the most basic care. The hospitals turned us away. We were just another poor family with no resources. Kesha squeezed his hand, her heart aching for the young boy he'd been, forced to bear such a heavy burden at such a tender age. I watched her die slowly over 6 months, her body ravaged by the disease, he said, his voice barely a whisper. The whole time I was helpless, useless, unable to do anything to ease her suffering. The memory still haunts me. After she passed, I promised myself I would never be powerless again, never be poor again. I would do whatever it took to climb to the top, to amass wealth and influence, so that I would never be at the mercy of anyone or anything again. His voice was rough with old pain, the scars of his childhood still raw and tender. I did things I'm not proud of to survive, he admitted, his gaze unwavering. Worked for people who taught me how the real world operates, the dark underbelly of society where anything is possible for a price. Eventually, I was smart enough and ruthless enough to take over, to build something of my own, to create an empire where I called the shots. That's why you help people who can't go to the police, Kesha realized, piecing together the puzzle, understanding the motivation behind his actions. Because you understand what it's like to have nowhere else to turn, to be abandoned by the system. Yes, he said, his gaze meeting hers. But I also learned to keep everyone at arm's length, to build walls around myself so high that no one could get close enough to hurt me. Emotions were weakness. Love was a liability, a distraction that could compromise my goals. I had women, of course, but never anyone who truly mattered. The relationships were transactional, based on mutual benefit, never on genuine connection. He turned to face her fully, his dark eyes intense, searching her face for understanding and acceptance. Until you, Kesha. Kesha's breath caught in her throat, waiting for him to continue. I remember that day in the break room, when you shared your lunch with someone you barely knew, without a second thought, he said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. That simple act of kindness broke something open inside me, cracked the walls I had spent years building around my heart. I started watching you, studying you, trying to understand how you stayed so kind in a world that was often so cruel. He continued, his voice filled with admiration. You'd been hurt. I could see it in your eyes, but you hadn't let it make you bitter or cynical. You still believed in the good in people, even after everything you'd been through. His thumb traced circles on her palm, his touch gentle and tender. I fell in love with you long before that wedding, he confessed, his voice barely a whisper. I saw your strength, your resilience, your unwavering spirit. You were everything I wasn't, everything I wanted to be. Kesha, when I saw Brandon humiliate you, I couldn't stay silent anymore, he said, his voice filled with emotion. I had to have you, had to protect you from the pain, had to show you what you deserved. Tears streamed down Kesha's face, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and overwhelming love. I love you, too, Sung-min, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I think I started falling the moment you walked down that aisle. You looked at me like I was precious, like I was worth saving. Nobody had ever looked at me like that before. Sung-min wiped her tears away gently, his touch featherlight on her skin. You saved me too, Kesha. You reminded me that there's more to life than power and control, that being vulnerable with the right person isn't weakness, it's strength. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. A kiss that spoke of shared dreams and a future filled with love and happiness. Kesha melted into him, pouring everything she felt into the kiss, her heart overflowing with a joy she had never thought possible. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard, their eyes locked in an intimate embrace. Take me inside, Kesha whispered against his lips, her voice filled with longing. I need you. They barely made it to the bedroom, their desire a driving force that propelled them forward. Clothes disappeared in a trail from the rooftop door to the bed, discarded in their haste to be closer to each other. This time, their lovemaking was different, slower, deeper. Every touch was a confession. Every kiss was a promise. Sung-min took his time mapping every inch of Kesha's body with his hands and mouth, exploring her curves, reveling in her softness, savoring the way she responded to his touch. He whispered how much he loved her, how beautiful she was, how she made him feel complete. He made her feel like a work of art, something to be cherished and worshipped. When Kesha touched him in return, exploring the hard planes of his body, tracing the lines of his muscles, Sung-min trembled beneath her hands, surrendering completely to her touch. She loved that she could affect him this way, that this powerful man, who controlled so much, surrendered completely to her. They moved together in perfect rhythm, finding a connection that went beyond the physical, a merging of souls that transcended the ordinary. This was hearts binding, two people becoming something more together than they ever were apart. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, their skin cooling in the air-conditioned bedroom, their bodies sated but their hearts still yearning for more. Kesha traced the scars on Sung-min's chest, each one a story from his difficult past, a testament to his strength and resilience. Tell me about this one, she said softly, touching a long, thin mark along his ribs. Knife fight, he said simply, his voice devoid of emotion. When I was 17, I was protecting my sister from a man who wouldn't take no for an answer. And this one, she touched a small circular scar on his shoulder. Gunshot wound, he said, his voice still flat. 3 years ago a deal went wrong. She kissed each scar gently, a silent expression of gratitude and admiration. Thank you for surviving, for being here with me now. Sung-min pulled her close, burying his face in her hair, inhaling the scent of her skin. Thank you for seeing past the monster everyone else sees, for loving all of me, even the dark parts. You're not a monster, Sung-min, Kesha insisted fiercely, her voice filled with conviction. You're a man who does what's necessary to protect the people you care about. There's nothing monstrous about that. They fell asleep, wrapped around each other, hearts beating in sync, their love a shield against the darkness of the world. Outside, New York City never slept, its lights blazing, its energy pulsing, always moving, always changing. But in this moment, in this bed, time stood still. Kesha had found her home, not in a place, but in a person, in strong arms that held her close, in dark eyes that saw her true worth, in a dangerous heart that beat only for her. She was completely, utterly, perfectly in love, and she knew without any doubt that Sung-min felt exactly the same way. The bakery had been open for 2 months and was already a resounding success, exceeding all her expectations. Lines formed every morning for Kesha's famous lemon cake and decadent chocolate croissants, her signature creations that had quickly become the talk of the town. Food bloggers raved about her cinnamon rolls, calling them the best in the city, and her innovative flavor combinations were constantly generating buzz on social media. She'd even been featured in a New York Times article about the city's best new dessert spots, a testament to her talent and hard work. When a potential investor from Boston reached out, expressing a keen interest in discussing the possibility of opening a second location, Kesha was thrilled, envisioning a future where her culinary creations could be enjoyed by people all over the country. Sung-min, however, had been less enthusiastic about the prospect, a shadow of concern clouding his usually stoic features. I don't like you traveling without me, he'd said that morning, watching her pack an overnight bag with a possessive glint in his eyes. It's just Boston, Sung-min. I'll be back tomorrow night, Kesha said, trying to reassure him, although a small part of her couldn't help but be flattered by his protective instincts. She kissed him softly, running her fingers through his dark hair. Besides, Taein is coming with me. I'll be perfectly safe. Sung Min had pulled her close, holding her longer than usual, his embrace tighter than necessary. Call me the moment you arrive, he instructed, his voice laced with a barely perceptible tremor. And again before you go to bed, and the second anything feels wrong. Promise me, Kesha. You worry too much? She teased, trying to lighten the mood, not fully understanding the primal instinct that was making him so tense, the foreboding feeling that something was amiss. Now, sitting in a cold, damp warehouse with her hands tied tightly behind her back, Kesha finally understood. She should have listened to that worry in his voice, should have heeded the silent alarm bells that had been ringing in his head. The meeting in Boston had seemed legitimate enough. She'd met with the investor at a nice restaurant in the city's Back Bay neighborhood, discussed numbers and locations, and felt genuinely excited about the prospect of expanding her business. Taein had been with her the whole time, a silent but watchful presence, scrutinizing every detail, ensuring her safety. But when they'd walked back to their hotel after the meeting, a nondescript black van had suddenly pulled up beside them, screeching to a halt. Men with guns had emerged from the vehicle, grabbing her before Taein could react, their movements swift and efficient. She'd heard him shout, heard the sound of gunfire erupting in the night, a chaotic symphony of violence. Then someone had pressed a chloroform-soaked cloth over her face, and everything had gone black. She'd woken up here, in this desolate, forgotten place. Concrete floors, metal walls, a single, flickering light bulb hanging precariously from the ceiling, casting long, distorted shadows that danced around the room. Her head pounded, her wrists burned from the chafing of the rope, and a thick knot of fear sat like a block of ice in her stomach. The heavy metal door scraped open with a jarring screech, shattering the silence and sending a jolt of adrenaline through her veins. Victor Kane walked in, his face contorted in a self-satisfied smirk, his eyes gleaming with a predatory triumph. Two large, imposing men flanked him, their presence a silent threat. Finally awake, Victor said, his voice dripping with a mocking politeness. Good. I need you conscious and able to talk. We have a lot to discuss. What do you want? Kesha asked, her voice coming out stronger than she felt. A defiant act of courage in the face of overwhelming fear. Simple, Victor said, pulling up a chair and sitting facing her, his gaze unwavering. I want Sung Min to understand that he can't humiliate me without consequences. That actions have repercussions, especially when they involve me. Victor's smile was cold, devoid of any warmth or empathy. He embarrassed me in Las Vegas, made me look weak in front of important people. That's bad for business, Kesha. It damages my reputation, undermines my authority. So, you kidnapped me? Kesha said, her mind racing, trying to formulate a plan, searching for any glimmer of hope. That's your big plan? To prove you're still powerful by abducting an innocent woman? You're not just any woman, Kesha, Victor said, his eyes narrowing. You're his weakness, the only thing in this world he actually cares about, the chink in his armor. He'll do anything to get you back, including giving me what I want. Kesha's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of information she had gleaned about Sung Min's world, trying to understand the intricate web of power and betrayal that surrounded him. She'd learned enough to understand how this worked, the unspoken rules of the game. Victor would make demands, leveraging her life as a bargaining chip. Sung Min would have to choose between protecting his empire and ensuring her safety. A Sophie's choice with devastating consequences. Either way, Victor won. He'll kill you for this, Kesha said quietly, her voice filled with a quiet certainty. Victor laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed through the warehouse. He'll try, of course, but I have you and that changes everything. He's not going to risk your life, Kesha. He's too sentimental for that. Back in New York, Sung Min's phone buzzed with an incoming call from Taein. The moment his friend's panicked voice crackled through the speaker, his world stopped. The air seemed to thin, his heart constricted in his chest. They took her? Taein said, his voice filled with pain and regret. I tried to stop them. I got shot, but I'll live. Boss, they took Kesha. The phone shattered in Sung Min's grip, the shards of glass and plastic falling unnoticed to the floor. Around him, his luxurious home office, usually a sanctuary of calm and control, suddenly felt too small, too confining. The air too thin to breathe. Rage, pure and absolute, flooded through him, a tidal wave of fury that threatened to consume him entirely. Not the controlled anger he used in business, the calculated ruthlessness that allowed him to make cold, hard decisions. This was something primal, something visceral, something murderous. Everyone now. He spoke into his backup phone, his voice deadly calm, each word a precise instrument of destruction. I want everyone here now. Within an hour, 20 of his most trusted people, the most loyal and ruthless members of his organization, filled his penthouse, their faces grim, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Sung Min stood before them, his posture rigid, his gaze burning with an intensity that made even his most seasoned enforcers take an unconscious step back. They'd seen him angry before, had witnessed his brutal efficiency in dealing with enemies. But this was different. This was a man who had been pushed beyond his breaking point, a man who would burn the entire world to ash if that's what it took to get her back. Victor Kane took Kesha, he announced, his voice a low, menacing rumble that sent a shiver down their spines. Find him. I want every resource we have dedicated to this. Hack his accounts, track his people, tear apart every property he owns. I want her location within 6 hours. Do you understand? His tech specialist, a young woman named Dana, whose fingers danced across her laptop with a speed and dexterity that bordered on the supernatural, worked frantically, her brow furrowed in concentration. Boss, I'm picking up chatter on Kane's encrypted channels. They're in Boston, somewhere near the Port District. Narrow it down, Sung-min commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. For hours later they had an address. An abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. A property that Victor's company owned through a complex web of 3 shell corporations. A deliberate attempt to obfuscate his involvement. Sung-min gathered his team, checked his weapons, and transformed into someone else entirely. He shed the persona of the doting boyfriend who brought Kesha breakfast in. The aftermath was handled swiftly and decisively. Their refuge was a modern, secluded house perched dramatically on a cliff, offering a breathtaking view of the vast Pacific Ocean. Kesha stepped into the shower, letting the warm water wash away the day's lingering terror. As she emerged, wrapped in a plush, comforting robe, she found Sun-min standing silently by the window. He had cleaned himself up, but a subtle tremor still ran through his hands. She noticed the chinks in his usually impenetrable armor, the fear he had been valiantly suppressing. "Hey," she said softly, crossing the room to stand beside him. "I'm here. I'm safe now. We stopped him." Sun-min's voice was hollow, devoid of its usual strength. "I lost control. I beat him until he couldn't move anymore while you watched. You saw the monster inside me, Kesha. You saw what I'm truly capable of." Kesha gently took his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her gaze. "I saw a man protecting the woman he loves with every fiber of his being. I saw someone willing to move heaven and earth to keep me safe from harm. There's absolutely nothing monstrous about that. I enjoyed it, Kesha," he confessed, his voice cracking with pain, as if admitting something that was tearing him apart. "For a moment, a dark part of me reveled in his suffering, wanted him to experience even more pain. He kidnapped me, Sun-min. He threatened to kill me. You had every right to feel that way." She pressed her forehead against his, her eyes filled with unwavering love and understanding. "I love you, Sun-min, all of you, the refined gentleman who brings me breakfast in bed, the fierce warrior who tears apart anyone who dares to threaten me. Every single part." A wrenching sob tore from his throat, the sound of a dam finally breaking. This formidable man, who prided himself on never showing weakness, crumbled in her arms, the accumulated pressure of months of relentless control finally shattering. Kesha held him tightly as he trembled, offering silent comfort and unwavering support. When he finally lifted his head, his eyes were red-rimmed but held a newfound clarity. "I'm done with all of it," he declared, his voice firm. "The empire, the constant violence, the life that put you in danger. I'm walking away, Kesha. I have enough legitimate businesses to provide for us comfortably forever. I want a clean life, a peaceful life with you. Marriage, maybe even children someday, normal things. Are you sure, Sun-min? That world is all you've ever known." "You're all I need to know," he replied, cupping her face in his hands. He kissed her deeply, pouring all his pent-up emotions into the kiss, his love, his gratitude, his unwavering devotion. "Marry me, Kesha. Be my wife. Let me spend the rest of my life keeping you safe and happy." "Yes," she breathed, her heart overflowing with joy. Yes to everything. They moved to the bedroom, seeking solace and reassurance in each other's arms, needing to replace the lingering fear with the warmth of their love. Sung-min undressed her slowly, reverently, his hands tracing every curve, worshipping every inch of her skin. When he gently laid her on the bed, he covered her body with his, needing to feel her alive and whole beneath him. Their lovemaking was desperate, intense, a testament to their survival. Each touch was a reminder that they had overcome the darkness, that they were still here, together. Each kiss was a promise of a shared future, a vow of forever. Sung-min moved within her with controlled power, watching her face, memorizing every expression, every flicker of emotion. When Kesha cried out his name and her body shattered around him, he followed immediately, emptying himself into her as if offering her his very soul. They made love twice more throughout the night, unable to get close enough to feel enough, to prove to themselves that they were truly together, that this was real. Between their passionate embraces, they talked about the future, weaving dreams and aspirations into the fabric of their love. Kesha envisioned expanding her bakery, creating more locations, sharing her culinary creations with the world. Sun-min spoke of his legitimate business ventures, expanding his real estate portfolio, investing in innovative technologies, building a legacy of success and integrity. They talked about a wedding, small and intimate, surrounded by only their closest friends and family. Maybe a house somewhere quiet, away from the city's hustle and bustle, where they could simply be themselves, a sanctuary where they could nurture their love and build their family. As dawn broke over the Pacific, painting the sky in breathtaking shades of pink and gold, they lay tangled together, limbs intertwined. Sun-min gently traced patterns on Kesha's back, while she rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "I almost lost you," he whispered, his voice filled with raw emotion. "I can't ever go through that again." "You didn't lose me, Sun-min. I'm right here," she reassured him, lifting her head to look into his eyes. "And I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me forever." "Forever sounds perfect," he replied, kissing her softly. "I love you more than I ever knew it was possible to love someone. I love you, too, my dangerous, gentle, complicated, perfect man." Outside, the world continued its relentless turning, oblivious to the profound change that had taken place in their lives. But in that moment, in that bed, they had everything they needed. Love that had been tested and proven unbreakable, trust earned through fire, and a future stretching ahead of them, filled with endless possibilities. Sun-min had spent his entire life fighting, striving for power and control. Now, finally, he could rest, knowing that he had found something infinitely more valuable. Home in Kesha's arms. That was worth everything. 6 months had passed, and everything had been transformed. Kesha stood in front of a full-length mirror in a stunning beachfront villa in Maui, barely recognizing the radiant woman staring back at her. Her wedding dress was simple yet elegant. A flowing white silk gown that cascaded over her curves like water, adorned with delicate lace sleeves and a neckline that hinted at the beauty beneath. Her hair was styled in soft, loose waves, with fresh, fragrant white plumeria blossoms tucked behind her ear. She looked undeniably happy, radiant with love. "You're glowing, Kesha," her sister Michelle said, gently adjusting the flowers in her hair. "I've never seen you like this. You seem complete." Kesha smiled at her reflection, her eyes sparkling with genuine joy. "I've never felt like this, like everything is finally falling into place. Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Michelle's eyes misted over with tears of happiness for her sister. "I'm so incredibly happy for you, Kesha. When I saw that video of your first wedding, I wanted to fly to Miami and punch Brandon in the face. But then Sun Min walked down that aisle, and I knew he was your person, the one you were always meant to be with. He saved me, Michelle," Kesha said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. "In every way a person can be saved, he rescued me." The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of transformative change. True to his word, Sun Min had completely severed ties with his criminal empire, transferring control to trusted associates who would maintain the operations. He was out entirely. Now his focus was solely on his legitimate businesses. Real estate development, tech investments, import companies, everything above board, everything ethical, everything clean. Kesha's bakery had exploded in popularity, exceeding her wildest expectations. The Manhattan location was such a resounding success that she had opened 4 additional locations. 1 in Brooklyn, another in Boston, and 2 in Miami. She now employed over 30 people, providing them with fulfilling careers and a supportive work environment. Food magazines raved about her delectable creations, and celebrity chefs flocked to her bakeries to sample her innovative desserts. She was living a dream she had barely dared to imagine. A dream fueled by her passion, her talent, and the unwavering support of the man she loved. But the best part of her day was coming home every night to Sun Min, to a man who looked at her as if she hung the moon, who championed every dream, celebrated every success, and held her close through every moment of self-doubt. "It's time," Michelle said, squeezing Kesha's hand gently. "Your groom is waiting." The wedding ceremony took place on the beach at sunset, the golden hour casting a magical glow over the scene. Only 20 guests were invited, all people who truly mattered to Kesha and Sun Min, individuals who had played a significant role in their lives. Taeyeon stood beside Sun Min as his best man, looking dashing in a light gray suit. Mrs. Chun dabbed her eyes with a lace-trimmed handkerchief, overcome with emotion. A few of Kesha's close friends from New York sat in white chairs arranged in the soft sand, their faces filled with joy and anticipation. But Kesha only had eyes for Sun Min. He stood at the end of a path illuminated by flickering tiki torches, the vast ocean stretching out behind him, shimmering gold and pink in the setting sun. He wore a crisp white shirt with the sleeves casually rolled up and light gray pants, no tie, a relaxed yet elegant look that perfectly suited the occasion. When he saw Kesha, his entire face transformed, radiating love, wonder, and profound joy. Kesha walked towards him barefoot, her dress trailing gracefully in the sand. No one gave her away, because she was not property to be transferred. She came to him as an equal, as a partner, as a woman boldly choosing her own future, her own destiny. When she reached him, Sun Min took both her hands in his touch gentle and reverent. His eyes were already glistening with tears. "You're so beautiful," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "So are you," she whispered back, her heart overflowing with love. The officiant, a kind, older woman with silver hair adorned with flowers, smiled warmly at them both. "We are gathered here in this paradise to witness the marriage of Kesha and Sun Min. This is a love story that began with courage, with someone seeing value where others saw none, with 2 hearts finding each other against all odds." She turned to Sun Min and nodded. "Your vows." Sun Min cleared his throat, his hands trembling slightly as he held hers. 6 months ago, I walked into a wedding and did the craziest thing I'd ever done. I claimed a woman I barely knew as mine. Everyone thought I was insane. Maybe I was. But from the first moment I saw you, Kesha, I knew. I knew you were the one I'd been waiting for my whole life." Tears streamed down Kesha's cheeks, happy tears that she made no attempt to stop. Sun Min gently wiped them away with his thumb, his touch tender and loving. "You taught me that love isn't weakness, that being vulnerable with the right person is the bravest thing you can do. You saw past the monster everyone feared and found the man underneath, the man who just wanted to be worthy of someone like you." His voice broke with emotion. "I promise to spend every single day for the rest of my life proving that you're the most precious thing in my world. I promise to support your dreams, celebrate your victories, and hold you close through every challenge. I promise to love every part of you, exactly as you are, for as long as I live." Kesha was crying freely now, overwhelmed by the depth of his love and the sincerity of his promise. The officiant nodded to her, signaling that it was her turn to speak. "Sun Min," Kesha began, her voice thick with emotion. "When Brandon left me at that altar, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never be good enough, pretty enough, worthy enough. Then you appeared like something out of a dream and showed me I was wrong about everything." She squeezed his hands tightly. "You taught me that real love doesn't see flaws. It sees a whole person and chooses them anyway. You made me believe in myself when I'd stopped believing. You gave me the courage to chase dreams I'd given up on. You protected me, supported me, and loved me so fiercely that I had no choice but to love myself, too." Sun Min's tears mirrored hers now, 2 people completely undone by the power of love. "I promise to be your partner in everything, to stand beside you in success and in struggle, to remind you that walking away from darkness takes more strength than staying in it." I promise to love you with everything I have, in every way I can, for all the days we're given. She smiled through her tears. You saved me, but we saved each other. And I can't wait to spend forever showing you how grateful I am that you said, I will. The officiant beamed at them both, her face radiating warmth and happiness. By the power vested in me by the state of Hawaii, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Sun Heung-min pulled Kesha close and kissed her with a passion that spoke of a love that had conquered all obstacles. A love that would endure for eternity. He kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. Like she was air and he'd been drowning, finally able to breathe. The small group of guests cheered and clapped, their faces alight with joy for the happy couple. Tyan whistled, his voice filled with genuine excitement. Michelle sobbed happy tears, unable to contain her emotion. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying, the sun was setting behind them in a breathtaking blaze of orange and purple. Perfect. Everything was absolutely perfect. The reception was casual and intimate. A long table set up on the beach with twinkling string lights overhead, creating a magical ambience. Fresh seafood was grilled to perfection. Tropical drinks flowed freely, and Kesha's friend, Ka, had baked a beautiful, multi-tiered wedding cake. A labor of love she had insisted on doing herself. Soft music drifted from hidden speakers nestled among the swaying palm trees. Sun Heung-min never let go of Kesha's hand. Even while eating, while talking to guests, while cutting the cake. He needed that constant contact, that tangible proof that she was really his wife, that this wasn't a dream. Now, as the evening deepened, it was time for their first dance. Sun Heung-min led Kesha to a cleared area of sand, the moonlight shimmering on the ocean's surface. The song was slow and romantic, the melody weaving a spell of intimacy and devotion. They swayed together, foreheads touching, lost in their own private world. I have something to tell you, Kesha whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Something I found out this morning. Sun Heung-min pulled back slightly to look at her, concern flickering in his eyes. What is it? She took his hand and gently placed it low on her belly. We're going to have a baby, Sun-min. I'm about 8 weeks along. For a long moment, Sun Heung-min simply stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, his face crumpled with a mixture of disbelief and overwhelming joy. He dropped to his knees right there on the beach, pressing his forehead against her stomach, his body shaking with emotion. A baby? We're having a baby? Kesha ran her fingers through his hair, laughing and crying at the same time. Are you happy? He looked up at her, tears streaming down his face, his eyes shining with pure, unadulterated joy. Happy doesn't even begin to cover it. You've given me everything, Kesha. A reason to be better, a home, a family. I never thought I'd have any of this. He stood and kissed her deeply, not caring that everyone was watching. When they pulled apart, the guests were clapping and cheering again, their faces filled with happiness for the couple. Tyan shouted, Congratulations, you too. Michelle was crying even harder than before, completely overcome with emotion. The honeymoon stretched out before them like a dream, 2 weeks of uninterrupted bliss in their private villa. The days were spent swimming in the crystal clear waters, walking hand in hand on pristine white sand beaches, exploring hidden waterfalls cascading into lush tropical pools. The nights were reserved for making love under the starlit sky, talking about their future, planning for the baby that was growing inside Kesha. Sun Heung-min was utterly obsessed with her belly. Even though she wasn't showing yet, he touched it constantly, talked to it, told their baby about how amazing their mother was, how lucky they were to have her. Do you think it's a boy or a girl? He asked one night as they lay in bed, the gentle ocean breeze drifting through the open windows. I don't care as long as they're healthy, Kesha replied, snuggling closer to him. Though I hope they get your eyes. I hope they get your heart, your kindness, your strength. He kissed her softly, his eyes filled with adoration. I hope they know how lucky they are to have you as their mother. On their last night in Hawaii, they sat on the beach watching the sunset, the sky ablaze with vibrant hues of pink, orange, and purple. Waves lapped gently at the shore, creating a soothing soundtrack to their love. Sun Heung-min sat behind Kesha, his arms wrapped protectively around her, his hands resting gently on her still flat stomach. Do you ever think about that day, Sun-min? Kesha asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. The wedding? Every single day, Kesha. Sun Heung-min admitted, his voice filled with sincerity. Best decision I ever made, walking down that aisle and claiming you as mine. People thought I was crazy. Maybe I was. But it was the kind of crazy that changes everything for the better. Kesha leaned back against his chest, sighing contentedly. Brandon actually did me a favor. If he'd married me, I would have spent my whole life wondering what real love felt like. Now I know it feels like this, like coming home, like being completely safe and utterly cherished. You are my home, Kesha? Sun Heung-min whispered against her hair, his voice filled with emotion. You and this baby, you're everything I need. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun slowly sink below the horizon, painting the sky in breathtaking colors. The sky darkened to deep purple, then navy blue. Stars began to appear, thousands of them, more than you could ever see in the city, shimmering like diamonds scattered across a velvet cloth. Promise me something, Sun-min, Kesha said softly. Anything, he replied without hesitation. Promise that we'll always be honest with each other, that we'll fight for this, even when it's hard, that we'll never take each other for granted. I promise, he said, his voice filled with unwavering commitment. Every day for the rest of our lives. He turned her face so he could kiss her, his lips gentle yet filled with passion. You saved me, Kesha, from a life where nothing mattered except power. You showed me that love is the only thing worth fighting for. We saved each other, she corrected softly, smiling at him. That's what real love does. It makes both people better. As the stars filled the Hawaiian sky, Sun Min held his wife and their unborn child close, feeling more complete than he ever thought possible. He'd spent years building an empire, accumulating power, wealth, and influence. None of it had filled the emptiness inside him. None of it had truly mattered. But this woman, with her generous heart and her beautiful spirit, had filled every crack and crevice, had shown him that being vulnerable wasn't weakness, that choosing love over fear was the bravest thing anyone could do. I love you, he whispered, his voice filled with more emotion than words could express. I love you, too, Kesha replied, her voice filled with tenderness. Always and forever. Forever, he echoed, smiling. That's exactly what they had. A love story that started with rejection and ended in the most beautiful beginning. A future full of bakeries and babies, laughter and challenges, ordinary moments made extraordinary by being together. Sometimes the most incredible love stories begin when someone looks past the surface and sees who you really are. When someone says, I will. When everyone else walks away, when two broken pieces find each other and become whole. As Sun Min and Kesha sat wrapped in each other's arms, watching the stars dance above the Hawaiian ocean, they knew one thing with absolute certainty. They were home. They were loved. And they were exactly where they were meant to be. Thank you so much for joining Kesha and Sun Min on their incredible journey from heartbreak to happiness. If this love story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel so you never miss another romantic tale. Drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from and what part of the story made your heart flutter the most. Did you love the moment Sun Min crashed the wedding, the passionate nights they shared, or maybe the beautiful ending with their baby on the way? We want to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to hit that like button and share this story with someone who believes in second chances and true love. Your support means everything and helps us bring you more amazing stories. Until next time, remember that your perfect love story might be just around the corner, waiting for someone brave enough to say, I will. See you in the next story.